Have you been setting boundaries in your divorce? Well, today we're going to be talking about 10 legal and emotional boundaries that we think you should consider when going through your divorce or de facto separation. Hello, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hi, everyone.
Now, it's really important that you understand that this is a general education discussion. What we talk about and what we suggest may not be a good fit for you, so always check with your lawyer. But we're going to be talking about 10 legal boundaries and 10 emotional boundaries that perhaps I wish I'd known some of. And we know a lot of our members, when we do our live Q&As weekly, they bring up these issues and Mum's just like, you got to set some boundaries. I would like you all, as you listen to this episode, to think about, have you even considered these yet? And if you haven't, how can you put them in place so that you can be better emotionally and in a better space legally so that you can have a less stressful divorce?
Yes.
But let's go to our jingle.
Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
Welcome, Mum. Welcome.
Hello, Laura.
Since we've added the jingle, which for some reason the podcast deletes the sound, the music in the background, so it's just me talking. So I am trying to figure that out. And sorry about the quality at the moment. We are changing systems, but I know that you would rather listen to us in a bad quality than miss us doing an episode. So we're just going to push on through. I am not a tech genius. If anyone is, please contact us.
Yep.
I'm just going to list out the 10 different boundaries we want to talk about today, Mum, and then we're going to go through them because I will create a checklist as well, so you can download it off our website, thedivorcecourse.com.au. Go to the free resources section and you can download this because I think it would be really helpful for people.
Yep.
Now, I'm going to quickly list them all out. We've got communication boundaries we're going to talk about, task boundaries, digital boundaries, living boundaries, financial boundaries, legal boundaries, emotional boundaries, physical boundaries, family boundaries, friendship boundaries.
It's a boundless number of boundaries.
I know, but I really do think it's something that you just have to initiate. So let's get into it because we've got 10 to talk about, Mum.
Okay.
So number 1, communication boundaries. And this can be tricky if you've got kids. So let's talk about if you don't have kids to start with, because this will be relevant to everybody.
Yep.
But it's really important to set limits on your conversations with your ex.
Yep.
So deciding how and when you're going to communicate and keeping it brief and to the point if you guys are not amicable. And of course, avoid getting drawn into any unnecessary arguments. What are your thoughts on that, Mum?
I think that's right, Laura. You're also protecting yourself because even if you initiated the separation, it's a lot to process. And I always say start as you mean to go on. So if you don't have children, you've probably got joint debts, mortgage, a car or pets or something, but that can be dealt with through text messaging. If you've separated and you are sure that's the right thing to do, then there is no point in continuing to essentially have a debate over whether or not you did the right thing leaving or whether you're going back or not. So keep it very businesslike and do your partner the honour, I guess, of allowing them to grieve without having hope that it will come back again, that the relationship will keep going. And from your point of view, if you were the one who didn't leave, if you were the one left behind, you need space to accept and understand the new reality. And if your ex is contacting you all the time, that's not helping you at all.
So I think a lot of people in the beginning, they go, we're going to do this amicably.
Yes.
We're going to sort this out. Maybe before, some people are amicable and they do that, but there are some that have a manipulative and controlling exes or high conflict exes. And these big, long discussions or email trails that people have with their exes, especially in the early part of the divorce, can really get people into trouble. We've talked about this in Don't Discuss Percentages, how the percentage pitfall argument. I'll put the episode in the show notes. But you talk about, Mum, that issue there. What's the issue there?
We've given a big talk about that, and that is you can say, and people often do, I'll go 50-50 and I won't touch your super, and they're just saying it to get out the door or to, not be seen as a bad person or because they're guilty. But don't do that. If you negotiate percentages, you will fight twice as long over what constitutes the property pool, so what 50% looks like. But Rose, the other thing with communication I wanted to say is no matter how the marriage ended, there needs to be a different way of living before and after. So, you really do need to sort of think about that right from the beginning. Don't give anyone false hopes. Don't confuse the other person, and protect your space.
When it comes to children, you may, if it's amicable, that's fine, but still set some boundaries around when they can contact you. Emergencies, of course, are different, but there are some great parenting apps for those people who have high conflict or manipulative, controlling, or family violence situations. There's the Our Children app. We've got an episode with the creator of that. You can go listen to that one. There's also My Family Wizard, and there are a whole bunch of other communication platforms that you can set up to do with them, and try and aim to have emotion-free communication.
Yes.
So we have a communication compass that you can download where we describe to you, the way to check your messages as you send them to make sure they are free of emotion, they're nice, they're exact, they're short, etc. And they're just the facts. So, all right. So have a think about your communication boundaries. I want you to literally think about, where is it coming from? Is it upsetting you? Could it in the future? So you need to start as you mean to go on. Mum wants to embroider that on everybody's cushion, but everybody's new divorce life. But start as you mean to go on. If you do not want your ex to be messaging you every 5 milliseconds, then you need to put some boundaries in place respectfully. And if they respect you, they will do that. Now, Mum, the next one is a little mini one, but I'm putting it in here because it's important. And I think a lot of people who perhaps are the primary carer are the ones that get stuck with this. And this is task boundaries. I think managing the day-to-day running of the household, and this could be financial or children or cleaning or whatever, the day-to-day running of the house and your life, all the things, all the chores, some people just keep doing that. They keep taking all those responsibilities on, even after they've separated. Even though, like, I heard of a lady who would drive to her ex's house, clean the house, cook the dinner, and then leave before he got home for him and the kids. I feel like there's some task boundaries that need to be put in place for everybody.
Yeah, I agree with you, Laura. I mean, you've got your side of life to deal with. They've got their side of life to deal with. Don't let them have you dancing on a string like a puppet, And if you don't free yourself from that, they may have moved on emotionally, but if you don't free yourself from that, you've enslaved your future self or your new self back into the same dynamic you were in. And one of the things about separation, when everything's horrible and everything's just like the apocalyptic and you don't know what's going to happen, the little glimmers of joy, and I've been there, that you can get are the joy of doing things your own way, enjoying your freedom and a different way of living. Yeah.
And I think it's important to note that this goes both ways. If you've been the one that never paid the bills, never looked at insurance, didn't have any understanding of all of that, it's time for you to take on that responsibility. And for those who weren't hands-on with the kids, if you're going to be sharing custody of the children, it's time for them to take on some of that responsibility. So it's a very hard transition, but I want you to stop and think right now, what are you doing on the day-to-day? What tasks, what's on your to-do list? What chores do you do without even thinking? Because you have done it without thinking for so long. Stop yourself and think, should I be doing this, or is it really their responsibility now? So it might take some time and some diplomatic discussions to remind them, okay, this is now your job. You need to do this for yourself. You need to take the bin out. I'm no longer there. All those kind of little things, you're just kind of going to have to extract yourself from it and do the new tasks that you haven't. Now, number 3 is digital boundaries. Now, this is a big one. Mum, I don't think you completely get the scope of digital boundaries because you didn't have it at that time.
I thank God I didn't have it.
And look, we're going to talk about social media and we're going to talk about emails and iCloud. But social media, for some people, they put, I went for a walk today. I got a cup of coffee, so they want to just say, we're getting divorced, or such and such did this to me, or look at this. So some people feel like they need to put that stuff on social media.
Yeah.
What do you say to those people who want to do that or feel the need to?
Don't.
Why?
Don't do it unless you're prepared for that to come up against you later on.
Legally, Mum.
Legally,
why?
legally, if it gets attached to an affidavit and put in front of the court, it could do badly for you. It could mean that you are identifying kids or families in the court because everyone knows who you are. So they know that the children are subject to proceedings, and therefore you're going to court asking for a legal decision, and that is a strict breach of the Family Law Rules and Family Law Act that says you must not broadcast or disseminate anyway something that would identify a person who's in family court proceedings, particularly kids.
Okay. So that's a legal boundary you need to set. And then on top of that as well, I've heard a quote that said, dance like no one's watching, but text and post on social media like a judge is reading it, because you might not think you're going to end up in court, but watch out if you do, because that stuff is it's not them saying this. They just post it. They put it in their affidavit and it's awful.
Yeah.
Now, the other part of digital boundaries for social media, I think, is, do you block, do you unfollow your ex, or do you let them stay on? Like, what can people do about that? Like, social media, I feel, can be used as a way to stalk and comment and make and belittle or make people feel bad about what they're doing as they go through an emotional roller coaster of breakdown of divorce.
So I think this ties in with the boundaries that you're talking about in communication. You, I think, have to make the day that you leave, the way you deal with everyone on social media, different to the next day. Because if you don't, and you stay friends with your ex on Facebook and for a couple of months and then stop, it can be quite a shock for people, and it doesn't seem like a natural thing to do. Now, if you're going to say to your ex, you can only communicate with me by text or by email at the moment, we're upset, or we'll only talk on Mondays, whatever, Facebook is a way for them to have shots at you or to communicate with you, even nicely. Even just putting likes on your posts can feel quite stalkery. So stalkery, is that a word? But yeah, so I think it's better probably to leave some sort of communication open. If you have to talk about the kids, you have to talk about the mortgage, but social media is not the place to do that.
And if you feel like your ex has access to your social media, they're reading your Facebook messages, they're reading your Instagram DMs, that is a breach of your privacy, and that can be considered family violence. So you can go and speak to the police if you feel like that is a big issue, or you can ring 1-800-RESPECT as well.
I've heard sorry, darling.
And then that goes into email and cloud security, iCloud security. So how many people, Mum, have we heard where the ex has been reading their emails? They have the password. They've been reading their emails.
They've been reading
or deleting them.
Yeah, deleting them or reading the ones from their lawyers or deleting. So if their lawyer writes a letter to your lawyer and your lawyer sends it to you, and they know how to get in and delete it, then you're really on the back foot. So I think you do need to protect yourself vigorously from that sort of stuff and limit to one form of communication only with them. I think that you need to have a little bit of a scan of your friends. I know this is hard, but not all of those friends will be on your side, and some of them will be leaking information.
We will talk about that in a minute as well. But yes, there are the screenshots and the sends and of people who you might have blocked your ex, but friends are doing the sneaky. They call them flying monkeys. So really what we suggest every time to our members is set up a new account, a new email address. Try and do it on a completely different platform. If you were using Gmail, use a different one. If you're trying really and make it a weird one if you want, just and get everything sent there. So keep the other one as it is if you want, but try and start a new one. And same with all your passwords and everything. Make sure you've got those digital boundaries in place.
Yes.
Yes, your ex might not be that kind of person. But it's horrible to find out later on that they are if they do it to you, because you can't undo it. So there's no harm in changing passwords and unlinking. If you've got Apple devices, unlinking, etc.
If you get a new partner, and I hope people do move on, how do you then deal with it on social media in a relationship, and then the other person can hear it? So it's best that unfriending is best. And I do agree with you. I encourage my clients always have to get a different email address, and even maybe another email address for their legal stuff or the letters. Just keep it all in one side, one place.
Okay. Now let's go into living boundaries, because this is where you live.
Yeah.
And a lot of people at the moment, Mum, are separated under one roof.
It's just terrible.
So how do people put up boundaries after they've separated but are living under one roof?
Well, it's hard. It's probably the worst sort of separation you can get. Some people I know have a lock put on the bedroom door of the room they're sleeping in and they're living in. Some people still share all of the house, but except the bedrooms. Other people, there's a second living area. They might divide, say, upstairs and downstairs to be separate. Best if it has a separate entrance, but it's hard. It's just hard.
Now, we've got a great episode called Separated Under One Roof, and we've got some great do's and don'ts in there which can legally affect your separation date. And if you want to go into depth on that, go and listen to that episode.
Yes, it's a good one.
If you are not separated under one roof, if your ex has left or you've left, there needs to be boundaries set about who can come into your home, even if the home still belongs to the both of you. What do you say to those people? Because we get so many mums that say, my ex just walks into my house whenever they feel like it, or they've still got a key, or so what kind of things that can these people do?
So first of all, you'd think because their name's on the mortgage or their name's on the house that they're entitled to come and go as they please. And a lot of people do think that. And sometimes the police think that, which is quite wrong. If they've gone, if you've separated and they've gone, then you have a right to privacy, and them turning up all the time is an invasion of privacy. And now that coercive control is a crime in some states, if you say, this is my living space, I do not want you coming into the house, and they continue to do it, it's either a crime or it could constitute family violence. So one of the things that you can do is write to them and say, look, this is my house now, do not come back in. You can change the locks if you can afford to do it. Otherwise, put bolts on all of the doors except one and then change the lock on that one. Remember the garage as well. But yeah, you need to be able to have your space, because one day there'll be a letter or communication to your ex that they don't like, and you are going to go home and be panicking about whether they're going to turn up, or it might even end up being scared to send it because they know where you are. And safety, Rosie, is the
So we've got some episodes that might be helpful for anybody in this situation where their ex is coming and going. We've got what about their stuff? And we've got many situations where the ex has left their stuff in the house and they just come and go and collect as they please. We've done a whole episode on that and what you can do about that. That would be a great episode if you have not yet done that boundary. And just touching on living boundaries, we've also got sleep, and we have a great episode about sleep and divorce. So prioritizing your sleep really matters in this. There's been studies that we talk about with Shay from the Goodnight Co. in that episode where she says it's nearly the equivalent of being drunk if you haven't had a good night's sleep. And can you imagine going to your mediation drunk? Like, you're not going to be making good decisions. So please go listen to that episode. She's got great strategies for those really struggling with sleep as they go through divorce. All right. Let's get into financial boundaries, Mum.
Okay.
So you always mention separate accounts. So what kind of boundaries should they set up when they've separated and they're moving forwards?
Well, if you've got an income, change the bank. And so set up a new bank, set up a new account, and get your salary diverted to there. That means you've got control of it. If you then pay some of it for the joint mortgages or whatever, that's fine, but you don't have your money completely visible to the other side and liable to be like frozen if the account gets frozen and you've got no money. So set that up, and again, as soon as you can, it's in our step to step, isn't it, Laura? As soon as you can, because It sends a message. No one would be surprised if you do it straight after separation. It looks odd if you do it months down the track. Well,
And we talked about in an episode just last week, income, expenses, and wages.
Mm.
And things after separation are dealt with differently as they are when they were in the marriage,
Right.
when looking at property settlement. And if you don't create these separate accounts and start to really separate your wages and everything moving forward, it is a giant mess and very hard to unpick. So for accounting purposes even, having separate accounts is great. And also, Mum, we've got many people stuck in the gilded cage
yes, don't we?
situation where their ex gives them little bits of money when they feel like it or when they're being good. So can you explain that good person, bad person situation?
And that's why we want your money separate. Even if you can't afford the mortgage, at least you've got some money to live on. And there are a lot of people doing this. We now recognise it as coercive control. I'll look after you, you stay in the house. And so you think, oh, great, I get to live where I've always lived because I couldn't afford the mortgage and they're going to pay the mortgage. But then what they do is they pay it a little bit late or not at all, and they keep you guessing. And you will find yourself lying in bed awake wondering if the money's going to come in tomorrow or if you're going to have sausages for tea again or if the bank's going to ring. So, yes, so good girl, bad girl puts your financial health in the hands of another person.
So if you are in that situation, we've got the Gilded Cage episode you can listen to, but also spousal maintenance, are you eligible? That's one way. If you've got no income and your ex has all the money, spousal maintenance is a way to get that financial freedom and have those financial boundaries before property settlement. And when it comes to financial boundaries, one of the things that really upsets a lot of our listeners, they have to provide all this disclosure to their ex, and it shows where they've been, what they've done, what they've had for dinner, and they freak out about it and they feel like it's unfair. What can people do about that?
I think it's two things.
Need to start doing your disclosure but have no idea where to start? Feeling overwhelmed about mediation coming up? Or just trying to deal with negotiating with a manipulative ex? Then you need to go to thedivorcecourse.com.au to go to the free resources section where you can get a mediation checklist, a disclosure checklist, a word salad, read a letter like a pro checklist, and also a before you go checklist. Get ahead of the game and be organised and ready, as this handy checklist, along with the accompanying episodes of the podcast, will be perfect for you. All you need to do is go to thedivorcecourse.com.au and go to the free resource section and download the free checklists today.
When it comes to financial boundaries, one of the things that really upsets a lot of our listeners, they have to provide all this disclosure to their ex, and it shows where they've been, what they've done, what they've had for dinner, and they freak out about it and they feel like it's unfair. What can people do about that?
I think it's two things. One, that people think it's unfair, and the other person has to tell you too. So it's just everything's out there. But the second aspect of it is that it can be dangerous if your ex is a stalker, or if you're afraid of your ex, or if they create scenes in front of people, then handing over that information can reveal where you've been and what your pattern is. But remember the Central Practice Direction that came out in November 21, revised in May of this year? It says none of those steps, i.e. the discovery steps, none of the steps need to be taken if it's going to jeopardise your safety or the children's best interests. So for that reason, if you've got a demonstrably abusive ex or financially abusive or coercive ex, then why not black out the locations? They can know the amount you spent and they can know what it was, but you could black out where you were. If you need to for your safety, you can do that.
And if you do want to learn more about disclosure, we've got great episodes on disclosure. I will put them in the show notes. Now, Mum, the next question about financial boundaries, and I think this is important to put in, and I don't think you understood it when I was mentioning it to start with, but child support boundaries. I mean, boundaries as in, if someone is giving you child support money to spend for the children, I hear so many people being told that they have to show their ex what they spent the money on, and that's not the case.
Oh, that's shocking. Think of it this way. The child support is not paid to the children or even technically for the children. The aim of child support, or what used to be child support, child maintenance, is that the person who's caring for the children has enough money to do. So that will be like if you've got kids, they're leaving lights on, so the electricity bill's much higher because you've got kids. You've got to pay the mortgage, and some of that's attributable to the kids. You might have to have a bigger house.
Right.
You can't get a motorbike, or I always say that you can't get a motorbike and live in a 1-bedroom apartment if you've got the children. Okay.
Yeah.
So this money really goes into what I'd like to think of as your consolidated revenue. And then from that, plus your money, the children's needs are met. But it is an abusive process for them to insist that every cent that you get is spent on the kids. And I'm so tired of hearing people going, I'm happy to pay child support, but I want it in a trust account for the kids. No, you don't. You're not getting that. And no judge would contemplate that. So it belongs to you.
And then the flip side of that is I hear some of our members say, well, we've got a private agreement. My ex gives me child support, like privately. We don't go through
The
child support. And sometimes those people, it's that same good person, bad person situation where, I don't know, maybe one week they've now got a new partner and the ex is like, well, I'm not giving you child support this week. Or they didn't let them have an extra day on the weekend. That's right. Yeah. So if you are finding that you've got a private agreement, they're giving you child support, they're supporting you in an formal way.
In a lovely way. Lovely way, yes.
You can create those financial boundaries for child support by going to Services Australia and getting them to set it up, because then you don't have to collect it, you don't have to follow up on non-payments, and that will give you a bit of breathing space and get you out of that good person, bad person situation.
That's right.
Now, legal boundaries, Mum.
Yeah.
There are a few things that people write in about. One of them is getting pressured. The pressure they get from their ex or their own lawyer or their ex's lawyer to sign some sort of agreement without proper legal consultation. So many people signed it on the hood of a car because I just wanted it done.
Yep.
And now I've seen a lawyer and I know what I was entitled to and I feel terrible. So what can people do to create those legal boundaries to avoid pressure?
I think a good thing to do is to create some delaying mechanisms. So you don't say no, but you say not now, and you say why, and ask for some time to consider those things. So that comes from, even if your lawyer is pressing you. Now, the only time that doesn't apply, and this is legal education only, but by golly, if you've got court orders and they say you must file a document by this date and your lawyer is going, come in, sign it, you better do it. You'd better sign it on that date. And even if your lawyer doesn't, and you know there's a deadline, don't be fobbed off by your lawyer. Be very clear that your role in a legal case, you are the person paying, you are the person giving instructions. Their role, a lawyer is an officer of the court, and their role is to help you present your case to court. Now, you'd be an idiot not to listen to your lawyer's advice, but don't let them railroad you. So you can almost always go, look, maybe, but not now. I just want to get it looked at, or I just want to think about it. So don't be pressured that way. And the other person, your ex, I've seen some terrible situations, Laura, where people want to go overseas, or there's been a funeral and they want to go interstate, and the other person goes, you can only do it if you sign this agreement about everything else.
So be careful. Yes. And Mum, you touched on the other part of legal boundaries, which is those legal deadlines. Like you said, stay on top of the deadlines. Even if you've got lawyers, know when things are due, know when things have to happen. But also, when it comes to those deadlines, don't let your ex pressure you into, and if it's a deadline made up by your ex, I want to hear by you by the end of this day at 5 p.m. And if I don't, I'll be very cross. You go, okay, great, thanks. But you don't have to follow your ex's deadlines. You do need to follow court deadlines.
That's right. And so often a form of control is that, Laura, they'll send it at 12, demand an answer by 5, and on a Friday, usually.
Can't see a lawyer, you can't get to your lawyer.
That's right, and it's designed to stress you out. Or over the Christmas break, it's designed to stress you out. So you do have a buffer, and the courts aren't unreasonable if you've been served with things. But don't let the smart aleck on the other side tell you've got 7 days. Where is that written? And if you aren't sure that whether their request would be regarded as reasonable, then just write back and say, I can't do it in that time, but I'll get to it next week, and give them another date. And then
now, remembering this is legal education, it's not legal advice. You must always see a lawyer. Every situation is different. We don't know what kind of situation you could be in, but keep that in mind, that those deadlines, you need to set up some boundaries for yourself for those.
Yeah.
Now, Mum, the next one is emotional boundaries.
Yes.
And the whole point of discussing this to start with is, I'm very aware that emotionally everyone is in turmoil, whether you are the one who left or not. And there is a tendency for people who are going through divorce to let it consume them. Yeah. And in the early stages, that's probably normal because your world is turned upside down. But
you don't let it just goes.
You need to find some time to still have some joy, some happiness, some love, and take a break from it.
And Ros, I think that is probably the point of all of the boundaries we've talked about so far, is protecting your peace and giving you time so that you can emotionally process things. If you are getting texts from your ex and letters from their lawyer and your family ringing,
turning up at the house,
and the bank ringing and all of that, one thing after another, you're punch drunk. You really can't process what you need to process. So not everyone can afford to go to a spa. Not everyone can afford to go and get a facial or hydro baths or whatever it is. But you can afford to just sit with yourself, make a pretty corner of the room, give the kids their iPads or whatever's, and just sit
read a
there.
book.
Read a book.
Think. Do some drawing.
Yeah, meditate, whatever your thing is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is a habit that people can get caught up in, and particularly on social media. And we didn't talk about this in the digital boundaries, but you may find that on Pinterest or on Instagram or TikTok, you might start to get all these divorce, breakup, narcissist things. Your algorithm will slowly change. If you're getting married, you get all this marriage stuff, all these ads for stuff. But if you're going through this, it picks up on it somehow. I don't know, the magic of the algorithm. Mindful of that. Find a way to correct it or get yourself away from it, because you can go into a spiral. And limit the views and videos you watch about divorce. Keep watching us, but limit the stuff you watch, and also limit the amount of time you talk about it.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about that with friendships and family as well. But you just need to be mindful that it doesn't completely consume you, which is such a ridiculous thing to say if you're going through court, or if you're literally worried about where you're going to live next week, or if you're worried you're never going to see your kids again. So there's so many things. But if you can at least batten down the hatches a little bit and give your brain a mental break, it'll be thankful, and your heart will be thankful. So jump from emotional, Mum. We've got 3 more to go, and we're feeding through them. Physical boundaries. So these kind of ones are custody handover. So when you're doing handovers, if you don't have any set rules or like a set way of doing things, handovers can become handover hell. And you can go listen to our episode called Handover Hell. But Mum, is it important for people to kind of have a set routine and some boundaries in place when it comes to handovers?
Absolutely. The kids need routine. They've got everything falling in place. So they need it to be kind of just a regular thing, that they just go from one place to the other without worrying about mum or worrying about dad. They just drift over. But if you have an argument at the time of changeover, I think that's where a lot of kids are very hurt and get very sad and unwilling to, maybe not unwilling to go to the other person, but unwilling to go through the changeover again. And then, of course, they have to do it again when they hand back. So you've got to have those routines. A practical, business-like way of doing it, that you can, if you can't talk civilly to your ex, then find a way where it doesn't look too odd.
And it's not by accident that a court will order particular ways to have a handover. It's not by accident that consent orders have a way to do handover. If you don't yet have a parenting plan, if you don't yet have consent orders, it's something you need to consider, because having those boundaries, those rules for handover is going to take away some of the stress. Worrying, messaging them saying, are you going to come pick the kids up? If you've got those rules in place, you don't have to worry about that. If you know that it's a specific location, you're not backwards and forwards and arguing over where to do it.
Yes.
So some clear rules on how, when, and where it's going to happen. And that's going to reduce the conflict and ensure a more safe handover. And like you said, the kids are going to be less stressed about it.
Yes.
Now, the other physical boundary that we need to talk about, Mum, is restraining orders and AVOs. If you do feel triggered by this, please call 1-800-RESPECT or Lifeline and hopefully get some help there. But sometimes you do legally need to protect yourself physically, especially if you're being stalked or harassed or anything like that. So that is an option for people.
It is. Look, you've got to do everything to keep you safe. And to some people, going to the court and asking for a family violence order may make them more vulnerable or upset the ex so much that their lives are at risk. So do it if it's safe. But if your ex is basically a law-abiding person, then you can get a family violence order against them, say that they're not to come within 100 metres or 200 metres of your house or your work, whatever. And if they are a law-abiding person, generally that's all that's needed. If they don't follow those rules, then you can report it to the police, should report it to the police. And the police, if necessary, will breach them for their crime, and they'll get penalties, and ultimately they could go to jail if they keep breaking the orders. Family violence order is a good idea if they'll follow it.
If you'd like to know the process, because I know some people are too afraid to do it just because they're unsure of what will happen. We've spoken to Police Inspector Dwyer, and you can go listen to that episode, and she takes us through the step-by-step process of reporting family violence in Queensland, but it's similar in most states.
Similar.
So, Mum, let's get on to family boundaries. So parental boundaries, we're talking about the parents of the other side, the in-laws.
The in-laws,
It's important to try and limit their family involvement in your divorce.
Yes.
Because it's your divorce, it's not their divorce. So you need to set expectations for any of your family members about what they can and can't discuss. And protect your kids from being caught in the middle. And you do not want the grandparents saying stuff to your kids. You don't want your in-laws ringing you up trying to convince you stuff. So set some boundaries, and like Mum says, start as you mean to go on.
And I think that those boundaries with in-laws really can be very bittersweet. Sometimes they're such lovely people, and you've been their daughter or son for so long that it hurts for them to withdraw from you. They may only do it for a short term, or you may need to say to them, look, in the short term, I know that you need to support your daughter or you need to support your son. So, for the meantime, let's just talk about the kids occasionally and set in something in place. It's odd, though, that you do have to set boundaries for your family as well, for your own family. It's not their issue. They can be there to support you when you're in a puddle of tears, but they shouldn't be too involved in your case. I mean, you have to have your supports, but you've got to walk this road, and you're the one who makes the decisions, and you're the one whose life is affected. So,
well, I did a TikTok, Instagram reel the other day, and it basically said, top tip, you need to be the one who has to live with the decision and the agreement. Don't take advice from anyone else who doesn't have to live with it.
Absolutely.
Apart from your lawyer. So, all right, and that moves us on to children's boundaries. And I think this is so important. This is like number one. I don't know why we're saying it down the end, but it is number one. Ensure your kids are not being part of the fight. They're not being messengers. They're not being spies. And let them be children. And keep them out of adult matters.
And the common scenario that I hear is that devastated parent who's getting a divorce, sitting around the table or in the lounge with members of their family or their close friends, literally belittling or rubbishing their ex. And the kids are just in the next room, and their little ears are picking everything up. Or you say, oh, you don't want to do it. You're not going to do it through your kids, but you can't stop your mum when she comes over because they're angry.
Crash talking you to the kids. Mum talks about some strategies you can put in place, what you can say or do legally around it to consider. So go listen to that episode. I'll put it in the show notes. Also, when it comes to them being used as messengers, what you can say if they come up to you and they say, oh, they said, I need to tell you this. You go, I'll speak to daddy or mummy. You don't need to worry about that.
Yes.
I'll deal with it.
Yeah.
And then just cut the conversation off and then communicate with the other parent. The last thing you want them to do is feel like they're responsible for their own upbringing, passing messages back and forth.
And it can work the other way too. If they've come back from the other person's place and they've got little bits, obviously kids, they'll chat in the car probably on the way home, or the first half hour that you won't be able to shut them up. It's really hard to do. But if they say something that's quite shocking to you or may affect your property settlement or whatever,
pique your interest,
just don't react to that. The worst thing you can do is go, oh, really? Tell me more about the new girlfriend. And then the kids get into the habit of remembering little bits from the other house and thinking, I must tell dad or I must tell mummy, because when I say these things, they're really interested in me and they want to hear more. Just a tip there.
Wow. Yeah. So start as you mean to go on. So set those boundaries with your kids. Set those parenting boundaries so you are not letting them do some of the work.
Yeah.
And set those boundaries with the family around you. And that takes us to the last one.
Yep.
And that's friends. So friendship boundaries. Some friends may want to offer you advice or take sides. So let them know what kind of support you need and set limits on how much you want to talk about your divorce. Because if you don't let them know what you need, they're going to just, I see it a lot when people break up with people and they go, oh, I never liked him anyway, or, oh, he was so horrible, I hated it when they did this, or, and immediately it becomes this gossip fest, and maybe they don't actually hate their exes, and then it creates this snowball effect of them always trying to say bad things about your ex. So you need to really tell them what kind of support you need.
And the words you'd use, Laura, would be something like, yes, I understand where you're coming from, but I've got enough strength to get me through this and I'll get my kids through this, but I don't have enough strength to help you guys process it all as well. You say that politely, but they're all, everyone mourns when a separation happens.
They treat it like a death, I think, because if you were in a group of friends and you always went out for drinks or you always went out for dinner and then one of the couples breaks up, it does cause a change in the dynamics in the group. And there can be issues with themselves where their partner might be like, well, if they broke up, then we might break up. And then they worry, so there's all these things that can happen. And the dynamics can change and they can be mourning and they are upset and they're angry. Maybe your ex did something horrible. So they're really angry. And you're like, dude, I'm the one who needs to be angry. You need to be the one who supports me, please. So it's hard.
Is it like that TikTok, I can forgive you for what you've done, but I've already told my mum.
Told my mum. That's right.
Yeah.
And I think friends and family are the key to getting through your divorce. 100%. The right friends and the right family. And Mum, what is the thing about getting in the hole that you always say?
Yeah, you don't want someone who's going to get in the hole with you. You need someone who can lift you up, including when you choose your lawyers or who you're going to confide in. You need someone who can lift you up and remind you what a normal life is like.
So, Mum, that was a really quick speed run through. You did say, oh, there's no way we're going to be able to get through this. I did speed run us because we have done pretty much individual episodes on all of these boundaries. So let's just go through them again. We've got communication boundaries. Have you worked on that? Your task boundaries. Are you still working on things for your ex? Your digital boundaries. Is your social media and your emails and your iCloud, are they safe? Living boundaries. Have you got boundaries or are people just your ex breezing in and out whenever they feel like it? Financial boundaries. Have you got a separate account yet? Are you protecting your privacy for safety reasons, for disclosure? And are you setting up child support so you're not desperately begging for things all the time. Legal boundaries. Are you getting legal deadlines thrown at you all the time, or are you putting your foot down and making sure that you're staying on top of the ones that matter and ignoring the ones that don't? And avoiding pressure. Are you making sure that you're not being pressured into everything and then going to regret it later? Emotional boundaries. Are you protecting your health? Are you protecting your mental health? Are you managing your emotions? Are you limiting your conversations about divorce, or are you getting down a rabbit hole where you're talking about it nonstop? Physical boundaries. Have you got rules in place for custody so it doesn't become a debacle every time? Have you got the potential need for a protection order? Have you considered that? Family boundaries. Have you sat down with your family and explained your boundaries for when or when not you want them involved? Children's boundaries. Are you making sure that there is a clear line between what's going on in your divorce and what's going on in your children's lives so that they are not involved? And friendship boundaries. Have you told your friends what you need from them, what kind of support you need, and have you told them if they're doing something that you don't need and if you need it to stop? So those questions I want you really to think about. And if one has stuck out in your mind today, maybe do yourself a favor and go and put some boundaries in place so that you can have a better journey in your divorce.
Yep. That's a great summary, Laura.
Thank you, Mum, for your time today. I'm sure we'll get more back into a legalish kind of episode next week.
Yes.
But thank you, everyone. Send us a message or comment below and let us know, what boundaries do you need to work on, or have we missed one? Because that would be good to know as well.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mum, for your time, and we'll see you next week, everyone.
Bye, Laura. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review, and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording